Welcome to Oxford Real Estate Insights and our podcast on real estate research and practice, the Property Pod. I'm the AI voice of your host, Martin Schmalz, and today we're focusing on a specific but important piece of the sustainability puzzle: how to align landlord and tenant incentives for energy efficiency improvements. Our guest today is Harald Mayr from the University of Zurich, an economist whose research focuses on decarbonizing the building sector. Harald studies how to increase energy efficiency in rental properties, particularly addressing the challenge of aligning landlord and tenant interests around energy improvements. In today's episode, we'll explore this landlord-tenant dilemma and learn about Harald's field experiment with hot water usage information. And we'll discover how some simple interventions produced surprising spillover effects in energy conservation. So let's get started.
So welcome everyone to another episode of the Oxford Real Estate Insights. We're very glad to have Harald Mayr with us today, who's at the University of Zurich. And as you know, the Oxford Future of Real Estate Initiative is focused on three areas of research. One is technology and AI. The second is sustainability, and the third is regulation. And Harald is an expert on the second one. He's been spending many years thinking about sustainability in real estate, and in particular, how to decarbonize the sector. So I'd like to learn more about his research today, and one recent paper in particular in which they think about ways and mechanisms how one can reduce emissions from the building sector. So welcome very much, and thanks for taking the time, Harald. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you, Martin. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for having me.
Happily. So Harald, why don't you just tell us a bit about your research background and how you got to the topic of decarbonizing the building sector and the real estate sector?
Yes, I'd love to. So I'm an economist by training, and I started to work on energy and sustainability topics at ETH Zurich after my PhD. And I soon got in contact with the real estate sector because the real estate sector is a major sector when it comes to energy and to sustainability. And I was happy to establish a collaboration with important players in the Swiss real estate sector. There's a large landlord, an institutional investor in real estate, and another company that is a real estate management company and that is managing real estate for this particular landlord, but also for other landlords. And so we were able to conduct field experiments, but also work with very interesting data. And that's where I'm coming from, and that's a series of projects with those partners that take place over the last couple of years.
And that's exciting. So what is the big question that you're after? What is the big question that you're out to answer?
The big question, I think, is in the setting of landlords and tenants with their own particular interests, how can we increase energy efficiency in the building sector?
Right.
This is always very often framed as a conflict of interest, right? Landlords have their interests, tenants have other interests potentially, and it's very often framed as landlords against tenants, tenants against landlords. And so our question is, how can we bring landlords and tenants together, and how can we increase energy efficiency, keeping both parties' interests aligned?
Interesting. So is there some, would you call it a market failure that happens in the sector? For example, when renters don't really pay for their own electricity. So I live in a building, and I don't think that I receive my own warm water bill, for example. That's like a house level thing, which makes me not particularly careful about how much hot water I use. Is that part of the problem?
I think that's an important part of the problem. That's a particular problem that we studied in a recent project. And more general problem is what we call the landlord-tenant dilemma.
Yeah.
And that is basically the idea that you have an investment in energy efficiency that would decrease energy use and would, of course, come at some investment cost.
Right.
And potentially the decrease in energy use would be more valuable than the investment cost.
So it's like a positive NPV project in the language of finance, I guess.
Yes, I guess that's how you would say that. And this particular project might not happen because the landlord has to invest, but the tenants would often get the benefits of the investment.
I see. So there's a bit of a free rider problem. So overall, at society level, it would make sense to invest in energy improvements, but for the person who has to make the investment, it doesn't pay off. Is that right?
Potentially, yes. So the landlord, in order to recoup the investment, would have to increase the rent or get the investment back in some other way. But the classical way would be to increase the rent. But it's unclear whether tenants would accept this increase in rents because of asymmetric information or other problems. And so the question is really, how much do tenants value energy efficiency improvements? And is it possible from the landlord's perspective to get back the money they pay to increase the energy efficiency of a building?
Oh, very interesting. That's cool. That reminds me of a podcast we will shortly have on a white paper, the Future of Real Estate Initiative put out on PACE contracts in the US and an idea of applying that to the UK as well. But anyways, that's just a bit of a teaser. So that seems like a well-known problem. And so you mentioned a field experiment that you're running in order to study these effects and how to mitigate them, or what's the field experiment about? What do you do there?
Our field experiment was the very first project in this collaboration with those companies, and there we informed households about their hot water use. And well, it's a classical nudge intervention, basically. And we observed how that changed people's behavior. And in that particular project...
So you just inform them about it. It's not like they have to pay for it. It's just a matter of making it salient or something for them and how much they consume.
It was a bundle of interventions. So the information was one very important component. We also had a savings goal of, I think, 5 or 10%. So if you would decrease your energy your hot water consumption by sufficiently much, you would reach your goal, and then you could also win a prize. If you were drawn in a lottery and you were reaching your savings goal. That was, I think, that was the bundle of interventions that we used in that field experiment.
Interesting. And what did you find?
We found a very interesting finding with respect to a behavior we didn't even target. So we did target hot water consumption, and that was decreased by, was it 5 or 6%? So it's a good result, but we also found substantial decreases in room heating energy consumption.
Interesting.
Because people use much more energy for room heating than for hot water, this second effect, this spillover effect, was actually much more consequential and was the main driver of our welfare effects in that intervention.
But that's very interesting, right? Because mostly it strikes me that the intervention is to inform people about their consumption, because honestly, like the lottery, it sounds like you are not going to win millions for this, no? So it's not primarily a financial incentive to save, but really just making them more aware. Is that right?
Yeah, the financial incentive to save hot water is not particularly large. There's multiple psychological or behavioral explanations that could be at play here. That's a very interesting field, I think, in psychology, but more and more also in economics, where we do field experiments on one behavior to measure outcomes on another behavior that was just not targeted.
So what would these behavioral mechanisms be? What are some of the explanations that come to mind?
I think the most likely explanation that would fit our results that were basically a reduction in this non-targeted behavior that was also persistent. So that was also there a year later.
Yeah.
Would be that people try to reduce their hot water consumption, and that makes them feel like they did something for the environment, right? It makes them feel like they're someone who cares about the environment. And as someone who cares about the environment, they might also have this potentially changed self-image, translate and affect other behaviors in similar domains.
Hence the spillover. And that's pretty great, huh? So for the landlords, it seems like this is a profitable intervention, no? So you just inform people, which is mostly cost-free. You run a bit of a lottery to make it more exciting. But it seems like at the bottom line, this is financially attractive for a landlord to continue doing these interventions. Is that what they concluded as well?
That depends on the way hot water and heating expenses are built and who's paying for them. In our setting in Switzerland, we usually have tenants pay for their heating bills and for their hot water bills. So it was mostly the tenants who would save here. But I see landlords and real estate management companies being more and more environmentally and energy conscious, trying to reduce the carbon footprint of their portfolios. And so using that motivation, it really also makes sense from a landlord's perspective.
I see, that makes sense. So even if the financial gains then accrue to the tenant, it still helps reduce the emissions in the landlord portfolio. So that makes a lot of sense. Interesting. So I guess, is it an open question then whether in settings where the landlord also pays for heating, I don't know whether that might happen, whether you could also get tenants to reduce their energy consumption by simply making them aware? I guess that would remain an open question. Is that right from the research?
There might well be nudge interventions in such settings. I wouldn't know without checking the literature in a bit more detail. Yeah. In particular, in the US, they ran many field experiments using O-power, where mostly electricity, but also for natural gas, where I guess households would also mostly pay for their use. Oh, I think, well, somewhere in the back of my head, I think there's one particular intervention that does exactly that. In a setting where tenants or households do not pay for energy. I think I would have to look that up, but I think there is something about that.
Cool. So, and where are you going to take this research going forward?
So we had this interesting problem that when we started the field experiment, we could only do it with households that actually had household level meters, because we needed to know their hot water or heating consumption.
That's right, yeah.
So we were quite restricted in our field experiment. We had a big portfolio of real estate, and we can only run our field experiment in a subsample that would actually have the meters.
Yeah, right.
And the meters, well, they're interesting from a research perspective, but they're also enabling to build the households based on their energy consumption.
That's right.
And that, well, that was my realization back then. It should be much more important determinant of energy consumption, right? Whether you actually pay for your energy or whether the building pays for energy and you just pay your share of the total energy bill.
Yeah.
And so I became interested in what happens when you get to pay for your own energy use.
Very interesting. Well, I look forward to learning more about that research when that is ready. Cool. Well, very interesting. Thanks so much for joining us, and I hope we get to talk again soon.
Thanks, you, Martin. It was fun. Thank you.
That was Harald Mayr from the University of Zurich, sharing insights from his research on behavioral interventions in energy efficiency. His key finding? A simple information campaign about hot water usage led to unexpected spillover effects, reducing both hot water and heating consumption. Harald's research demonstrates that even when financial incentives are minimal, providing information about energy use can change behavior in ways researchers didn't anticipate. The spillover effects were persistent, lasting at least a year after the intervention. Thanks for joining us on the Property Pod from Oxford Real Estate Insights. Don't forget to subscribe for more research insights on the future of real estate. I'm the AI voice of Martin Schmalz, and we'll see you next time.